Today, we are talking about one of the biggest U-turns in modern history. The story of how America went from being dead set on staying out of World War II to becoming a central figure in the entire conflict. All right, let's get into it.
So this is the big question, right? How does a country that's built its whole foreign policy around "not our problem" end up leading the charge? It's a fascinating story, and it all unfolds in the tense, chaotic decade before the war even officially began for the U.S.
You know, to really get what was going on in America in the 1930s, you have to go back a little further. You have to understand the ghost that was haunting the entire country, World War I. The memory of that war was so painful, the national promise was simple and powerful: never again.
I mean, the cost of that last war was just astronomical, both in human lives and in money. And that experience created this deep-seated feeling we now call isolationism. The basic idea was, you know what? America is safest and strongest if we just mind our own business and stay out of Europe's and Asia's endless, messy conflicts.
And this wasn't just, a popular opinion people talked about. It became the law of the land. America literally tried to build a legal fortress around itself, passing actual laws designed to prevent the country from ever getting dragged into another foreign war.
And the main tools they used to build this fortress were a series of laws called the Neutrality Acts. These were really specific. They were designed to cut the very strings that had pulled the U.S. into World War I, things like loaning money or selling weapons to countries that were already fighting.
And the logic behind them was pretty clear. The goal was simple: stay isolated. So the policy was just as simple: forbid American banks from lending money to any nation at war and ban selling weapons to them too. The thinking was, hey, if we don't have a financial or military stake in the game, we can't be pulled onto the field.
But here's the thing about a fortress. It can only protect you if the storm outside isn't big enough to knock down the walls. And throughout the 1930s, the storm was getting bigger and bigger, and the pressure on those walls was starting to become immense.
So, this is the part of the story where you start to see the first cracks appearing in that fortress of isolation. America starts looking for, let's call them creative workarounds to help its allies without technically breaking its own rules about being neutral.
As people in the U.S. watched Nazi Germany just roll over its neighbors and saw Imperial Japan expanding its empire in Asia, this uncomfortable question started to bubble up. Was a hands-off approach really the safest bet anymore? I mean, could America really just sit back and watch all of this unfold?
The first big workaround was a policy called cash and carry. It was a pretty clever way to walk a very fine line. Basically, the U.S. said to countries like Britain and France, look, you can buy our weapons and goods, but two conditions. You have to pay in full, with cash, right now, and you have to come pick it up yourselves on your own ships. This way, America was providing aid, but without taking on the risk of loans or shipping. But as the war in Europe got worse, especially for Britain, it became clear that cash and carry just wasn't going to cut it. So that led to the Lend-Lease Act. And this was a huge step. America essentially became what Roosevelt called the arsenal of democracy. We weren't selling anymore. We were lending or leasing billions of dollars worth of war supplies. At this point, the whole idea of America being strictly neutral was pretty much over. And it wasn't just about weapons. Diplomatically, the U.S. was getting closer to the Allies too. You see it with the Atlantic Charter. This was a joint statement with the UK about what they wanted the world to look like after the war. So America wasn't just a supplier anymore. It was now an ideological partner. That fortress wall was definitely crumbling. But for all the focus on Europe, the final push, the thing that would bring the whole fortress crashing down, it didn't come from the Atlantic. It came from the Pacific. And it happened in a single day, changing everything in an instant.
So, with all eyes on Hitler and the war in Europe, the final, decisive blow to American isolationism
Was actually delivered by the Empire of Japan.
See, Japan's own imperial ambitions in Asia were putting it on a direct collision course with the United States. The U.S. had significant interests in the Pacific, like in the Philippines, and the tension between the two powers had been building for years. It was like a ticking time bomb.
And then, on a quiet Sunday morning, that bomb went off. The Imperial Japanese Navy launched a massive surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. It was a calculated, brutal strike meant to knock the U.S. out of the Pacific before it could even get in the fight.
But it did the exact opposite of what Japan intended. In one terrible morning, it united a deeply divided country. The years of arguing, of debating between staying out or getting involved, it was all over. The attack on American soil made the decision for them.
And what happened next wasn't just about America entering a war.
It was about America taking on a completely new role in the world, a role that would really define the rest of the 20th century and honestly that we're still grappling with today.
So, to put it simply, Pearl Harbor was the event that shattered that fortress of isolation for good. It threw the United States right into the heart of the Second World War, and in doing so, it changed the course of the war and the future of the nation forever.
Which brings us to a final, really important thought. That incredible shift from isolation to full-on intervention wasn't just a temporary wartime measure. It fundamentally changed America's relationship with the rest of the world. And it leaves us with this big question. Once a country like America takes that center spot on the world stage, can it ever really step off?